If I were going to say that there's a verse that I want to wake up to every morning and read and say, that's my playbook for the day, this is how I need to be today, this is what I need to keep in mind today, that's one that I try to always remember.
If you don't watch the news, you're not informed. If you do watch the news,
still not informed. Well, I think that's the difference between theoretical Jesus and what's real.
You don't get to cherry pick which parts of the Bible you want to believe, right? You don't get to just believe that he saved you for your sins and ignore the part where he said he loved you. And it's honestly, you want to get to the heart of the matter, pick the one thing that's the most important to you that you will absolutely not give up under any circumstance. That's what he's talking about.
You got it.
Man, talk about bad preparation. So I told him we would stop and get pizza on the way here, and that we could go to the park real quick.
Here, right?
Yeah. So we were going to eat the pizza at the park. We were running late, didn't get to, so we wolfed down the pizza on the way here, and then got in here, and y'all had pizza. Domino's. That's exactly what we got was Domino's. Yeah, we got Domino's on the way here.
And still had like 2 or 3 left over.
Oh, yeah.
Y'all could have ate all you wanted.
We could have. Well, hey, welcome back. Let me say, hey, welcome back to the other 167. Garrett, Ben, Kenny.
Hello there.
Kenny and I got started without Ben. So you walked in, thought we were recording.
I thought y'all were doing great things, and I was like, man,
so we're gonna.
I'll take the day off.
That was a preview. We're going to retake that with you in here.
All right.
Kenny wanted to know what we were going to talk about today, and I told him I think that's cheating. We don't talk about it till we record. But
show prep.
I got
amateurs.
One page out of 2 pages.
One page out of 2
pages. Amateurs do show prep. Pros can just show up.
Yeah.
So I've got 3 or 4 or 5. I've got 5 things. 2 of them are tied here, but
right.
And one of them we may or may not get to. But I think I want to start on this a little bit. So this is a story I thought about last night, and you're going to wonder where in the heck I'm going with this, because this is the most aimless analogy it sounds like to start with, but I'm going somewhere with it. In 2015, I remember, so the Carolina Panthers, I'm a big Panther fan. We were really good that year. Yeah. And we were 10-0 getting ready to play Dallas.
Year. I remember how good everybody was. I mean, you had Panther fans. I didn't even know were football fans.
Yep, that's right. And
jerseys.
So that year, I really started to question my sports news from ESPN, and here's why. All year long, all you heard from ESPN was the Panthers were the worst undefeated team ever.
Yes. And I remember that time.
We played Dallas on Thanksgiving. We were 10-0, they were 3-7. But we were 3.5-point underdogs.
Right.
And I remember thinking, I know it's on the road, but we are 10-0, and we've been beating teams by 20 or 30 last couple of games. And I'm thinking, man, I tell you what, and if I had some money to put on this game right now, I'd put about 100 on this, because there's no way we won't beat them by 3 points. I mean, that's where I'm at with this. And we beat them by 20. I mean, I don't know. I told him I think our defense scored more than their offense did in that game.
Great day.
But, yeah, we can all agree on that
I'm
one.
not a Carolina fan, but if you can beat Dallas by 20,
there you go.
Excellent.
ESPN follows national media or national headlines. Right. And Carolina's a small market team. They're not getting a lot of headlines. But if you paid attention to the national news that year and what they said about Carolina, and you compared it to what was true, as a fan who watches every single snap usually 3 or 4 times, it just wasn't true. Right. They would say things like, their defense is fantastic, but their offense can't score. Well, we were actually statistically the number 1 offense in the league that year. And they'd say Cam Newton's great if he can keep from getting hurt, but he gets hit so much. Well, if you watch the games, he always slid or got out of bounds. He didn't, things that they were saying just, weren't true. Say that we couldn't stop the run. We were 3rd best rush defense that year. Just all these things. And if you were paying close attention to the facts, you would see that what you're hearing out there in the world is not true about this team. We talk a lot about how much information is out there in the world nowadays, and honestly, the quantity's gone up way better than the quality, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. It's so easy to start to buy into other people's narratives about whatever the subject is. It could be a football team, it can be about God, it can be about politics. But just because somebody says something doesn't make it true. And I think now more than ever, it's really easy to get sucked into that trap of believing something's true because you heard somebody say it's true.
Yeah. When we talk about the source of information that we partake of, and you used a good illustration of ESPN. Media is a good example of that. You gotta go to any media you watch with a filter, because all right, they've got a slant. One of them's going to be coming from the left, one's going to be coming from the right. ESPN's going to be coming from what's going to get them the most people to watch.
Yep.
So hot takes galore. Let's get a Stephen A. Smith that's going to make everybody mad, or make everybody a Skip Bayless so everybody will really be mad. Those kind of, they're looking for, we got to get audience, we got to get eyes. They're not necessarily looking for what presenting the truth. They just want to make sure you're watching and then you're going to tune into the games. Well, you got to be the same way because here's the thing I have found about a lie. It's got just enough truth in it to make you believe it. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to fall for a flat-out lie.
Yeah.
But if you got just enough truth, I might fall for it.
That kind of gets me to my analogy a little bit more, finally buttoning this up, and this is what we were talking about when you got here. I've always been a Christian. I've always believed in God. I've always prayed to God, and I've always had what I felt like was a personal relationship with God, but it's really changed in the last year or two. And I think this is the way I would describe it. When I was in college, so I was telling him I'm a big space nut. I love outer space, get geeked out on that stuff. So Kenny says a lot of times, do you believe Abraham Lincoln lived? Do you believe George Washington lived? Well, do you believe Jupiter is real? Do you believe the planet Jupiter exists? Okay.
Now, did we go to the moon? I'm still questioning.
If last week didn't get us enough hot takes, even flat earthers believe Jupiter is real, right? So, but you've never seen it, I'm guessing.
Right.
You've never. I mean, you might have looked up and seen a dot.
Yeah, the WTVD will say if you look up tonight, you'll see Jupiter.
You'll see Jupiter over there,
eastern sky. Or whatever.
Right. I think for me, for a long time, maybe that was sort of where I was with God. I knew God was real. Never doubted he was real.
Right.
I prayed and I had a real relationship, and I'd see him occasionally. I'd look up and I was seeking him and things like that. But I'll tell you what really. Where I'm really going with all this kind of stuff is that when I was in college, I took an astronomy class, and one night we had an observation thing where we went out.
Telescope.
Right. And I got to see Saturn for the first time.
Yeah.
Now, seeing Saturn in a telescope, it was a weird feeling because it looked exactly like every picture I had ever seen.
Yeah, okay. The pictures are real.
It's pretty white, big rings, exactly what I'd always heard. And I'm like, but this ain't a picture. I'm looking at the real thing, a real image right now of Saturn, the real thing. It's not the biggest thing in the world, but I can see it clear as day. And I think that really kind of explains things with God and my walk in the last couple of years, is that I'm getting to know him and seeing him in more clarity and more detail and seeing. Honestly, it's confirmed everything I've always heard about. You know, I've experienced so many things that I've heard you say on Sundays, and I've heard people say forever. And it's like, yeah, he is exactly what we're supposed to. And I say that to say, if you've gotten the wrong image of God, or depending on who your source of information was, he's not the mean tyrant and the judgmental. But he is exactly what I've heard in church. He is. A lot of people know he's real. A lot of people know he's out there. A lot of people believe in him.
And they've heard a lot of stuff about him.
Right. But get your telescope out and go get to know him and see the real, see the details. The Bible and prayer are the two that I think stand out the most as the ways you get to do that. But I think that was my best effort to try to summarize maybe what I have gone through, but also I think that's somewhat what we're trying to do on the show is help people to understand, or help people to continue to search and get closer and see that more clearly and more detail.
Right. No, I think there's a lot to unpack there, and I love how we started out there. That's some good stuff. I think one of the things that I would say is, you've got to know what the truth is, and that's, again, you hit it right. That comes from the scriptures. But what you're getting at and what you're explaining with the beautiful illustration of Jupiter or Saturn is Psalm 34:8. And Psalm 34:8 says, "Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good, and blessed is he who takes refuge in him." And so here's the thing. Find out for yourself. I know a Lay's potato chip is good. I know it is. I can look at ways some people eat it, but until I taste it myself, and then I'll find out, I bet I can't just eat one bag. I bet I can't just eat 3 bags. Because those things, I love them, and I'll get into them. Well, taste and see that the Lord is good. Taste, and that's really what he's saying is there. Come and experience. What you're saying is okay, you experienced it when you saw Saturn that night. You saw it live and in color. Well, I think that's the difference between theoretical Jesus and what's real.
Yeah.
And when you really find out the real, it changes everything.
I was just thinking about the news media when he mentioned the news media, because you can't believe news media. If you don't watch the news, you're not informed. If you do watch the news,
still not informed.
You're misinformed.
Misinformed. There you go. Yeah.
You got information. You just got to filter it.
Yeah.
And you can easily be misled. I was just reading a verse, Ephesians 4:15, I believe.
Speaks the truth in love.
Yeah. And I think we're supposed to be the examples of, I wouldn't say God, but Jesus. of what he represents. The only way to worship God is in spirit and truth. If nobody's seen God, then God has given us to be examples for someone to know Christ. And there is, and I doubt, and I'm not going to say this with 100% certainty because it's not true. There are people that have found Christ or somebody or God without nobody ministering to them. You hear that on the mission field all the time.
Yeah. It's rare, but it happens.
And so,
Or they get close to it. That's right.
yes, and so we are the ones that have to present the real Jesus to the world. Nobody's going to just go read the Bible because they want to.
Yeah.
Well, there are some people that do that,
But you are the one. We are Christ's ambassadors, is what the Scripture says we are. An ambassador is basically you are the mouthpiece, you are the representative, you are the one who's going to a foreign land, and you represent the king or the president or the government that you are serving. So,
and if you've seen Jesus said, "If you've seen me, you've seen God."
Yeah.
see me, see
And
the
he-
Father. I and the Father are one.
Yes.
John 8:51.
So we have a very higher standard than I would say than most religions because we have to represent. Well, some of us don't do a very good job of it. I know I haven't in the past. I mean, if you compare me to Ben, we're pretty good. I feel better about myself when I get around you, but other than that,
I think one of the best illustrations I've ever heard of what evangelism is I don't know. In Fuquay, we used to have a place in Fuquay where you could get a great milkshake. Now you can get a good milkshake. Do you remember where you could get a great milkshake? And it's not
Tasty
RJ's.
Freeze.
No, RJ's was up there. Elliot's used to have
okay.
one of the best, I thought.
Well, that was a little before my time, but Renee talks about
Yeah,
it.
Elliot's used to be a great place to go
Yeah.
get them. Well, listen, what
Or
is it that
orange
makes?
icy or something.
Yeah, their orangeades were good too.
Yeah, that's
what
what-
is it that makes a milkshake so good? It's the ice cream, it's the milk, it's the thickness. You gotta draw. I mean, I almost like to have to take a deep breath after I get through trying to. It's so thick. I mean, I got a.
my forehead caved in or something.
Yeah,
like
man,
that.
I ain't even
Such
got
a-
ice cream yet.
Yeah.
That's how thick I want it. And I tell you, there's another good one at the Cookout. They got peanut butter, and sometimes that peanut butter gets so thick you can't get it out. You can't do it through a straw. But if you get a good one, you suck in on the straw, and that stuff's just flowing up. That is a good milkshake. You know what we are? The milkshake is the gospel. We're the straw. And we are the avenue that we are going to make that thing work, or it is up to us, and people are going to see is the gospel true? Are people even going to be remotely attracted to the gospel? And it comes through our lives. And so, I think that's the whole gist of what we're getting at of being His ambassadors.
Let's camp out there for just a second. So, could one of y'all read Ephesians 4:1 through about 4:6? Because that's become a bit of
Got your glasses.
we use the word theme verse a little bit. I think
got
that's
you.
been a theme verse of mine for a little bit.
Oh,
here.
yeah. Therefore, I, the prisoner of the Lord, implore you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, showing tolerance for one another in love, being diligent to preserve the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as also you were called in one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all.
I would love to one day, either on the show or in a sermon, hear you unpack that entire 6 verses, because there's so many. I mean, I was just trying to jot down the keywords of it as fast as you were reading. I couldn't do it.
No, there's a lot going on in that passage.
There's a lot, but the worthiness of the calling.
Okay.
I think that's a key part of it to me, is that you can't just accept this and then just go on your merry way as if it doesn't happen. No, you've got to walk in a way that's worthy of what He's done for you and what He's doing in you and continues to do in you. But then how you doing that with humility, gentleness, patience, that is the part that a lot of people miss. And when I say they miss it, I mean a lot of people in churches don't walk that way, and therefore a lot of people outside the churches don't think that that's the way Christians act and walk.
Right.
And to preserve the unity of the Spirit, that's another thing, the unity of the Spirit. It's interesting to me where Jesus says He didn't come to bring peace but to divide. But at the same time, He's dividing he's dividing the group. He's sort of dividing us in two different camps: a half that wants to be unified and working together, and a half that wants to be divided and working against each other. And our side's supposed to be unified and working together.
Exactly.
And that's so. There's just so many things about that verse that I think, as I try to think about, if there were, I would say this from what I've read so far. If I were going to say that there's a verse that I want to wake up to every morning and read and say, that's my playbook for the day. This is how I need to be today. This is what I need to keep in mind today. That's one that I try to always remember is, am I doing, and especially in key situations where I know I'm about to be in a fight, I'm about to pick a fight, and I'm about to be mad. It's, okay, how am I supposed to handle this situation? With humility and gentleness and patience, apparently. So it's been just such a key verse, I think.
No doubt. And I love how Paul starts out that whole, and you also got to think about it. The very first word of the passage is therefore. Mm-hmm. All right. So now is he talking about the prayer he just prayed at the end of chapter 3? Is he going all the way up to verse 15? Or is he going up to the last therefore in chapter 3? I personally think he's doing the entire 3 chapters of everything that I've written before then. Now, because of all that we have in Christ, because of that he prays that we would know the length and the width and the breadth and the depth of God's love. I mean, there's so much going on in those 3 chapters that are so rich. I believe he's basically saying because of everything that I've written. But even if you just take the last little part of chapter 3, that's enough. And he says, therefore, since you have this, now live a life worthy of the calling. I love that word worthy. It means equal weight. In other words, the greatness of this salvation, my life, I want to live in a way that is weighty, just as weighty as that. And you think about how wonderful our salvation is. Well, our lives should balance out, if you will. It's almost like the old picture of the justice, the lady holding the scales in justice. Mm-hmm. It should be balanced. That's what it is. The calling you have, the life we live, they match. They're of equal weight. That's what worthy is. And I think you're right. When you begin to look at those words, and the reason that I know this is I did the staff devotion the other day on that. And that's why these words are on the board. I didn't know you were going to do it. That's just left over from a past week. But if you think about what should a church look like, what should a Christian look like, well, they should be humble, they should be meek, they should be long-suffering, which is patient. Forbearance is forgiving of one another, and there should be a unity. Well, that's Ephesians 4. That's where I got it from. Yeah. And so that's how, if our life is to be worthy, that equal weight, those are the 5 characteristics that should be there. And then how do we do it? Well, you got verses 5 and 6 that says, well, there's one Lord, one God, one Spirit, one baptism. In other words, we're joined because of what Christ did, so that we should be one, just as Christ and God are one. We should forbear, meaning we should forgive just as God has forgiven us in Christ Jesus, Ephesians 4:31 and 32. Long-suffering, we're going to be patient with one another. We're going to be meek, which is power under control. And humility is what we've been talking about all along, that's Christ. Philippians 2, verses 3 and 5 is our example. So, yeah, I love Ephesians 4, 1 through 6. That's an excellent passage. And I don't think there's anything wrong with, making that a life verse, if you will. Yeah. Maybe that's a good topic. Is yours Galatians 2:20? Isn't that what you told me one time? Or what's your life verse, Kenny?
6.
I know I ain't putting you on the spot with it.
Galatians 6.
That's right, Galatians 6:10.
Yeah, that came to me when I recommitted my life to Christ. Mm-hmm. That was the verse that came to my mind. That is really my biblical passion. Mm-hmm. My motivated passion is to help other people. And to do good, but especially do good to help the family of God. Yeah. Yep. And so I wouldn't say that I perfected that. I definitely haven't, but I'm in the works.
Yeah. So I think we all are, and I think that's seeing God in the way I'm trying to describe it in that analogy. It ain't like seeing a planet a long way away with some rings floating around it, right? Like his greatness is what gives you that desire. It's not, you're not doing it to get to heaven. You're not doing it to I don't even know that you're doing it to please him so much as you want to do it. Yeah. It becomes your desire to be nice to people and to see other people just if I can make your day that much better somehow,
Yeah.
just anything that you can do. I mean, it becomes I can't emphasize enough, it's not in a bragging or a self-righteous kind of way, because it really is, you feel you want those opportunities. You pray for those opportunities, honestly.
That's right.
To just help somebody else feel a little better today, right?
Well, and again, start back at taste and see.
Yeah.
You've tasted, and man, I sure wish somebody else would know how good this is. I mean, hey, look, if you got a restaurant that's one of your favorite. In fact, I just got a text. I think he listens. I'm not sure if he does. Just got a text from somebody a little while ago. It's his birthday today, and he texted me and he said, "I know his wife listens, so shout out,
Happy birthday!"
You're going to the Peddler tonight. That'll tell you who you are. If you'll sit down and listen to him talk about that restaurant, you'll want to go.
Yeah.
And the reason being is he begins to describe it with, you see the smoke up at the top, and then you just smell it, and then you can watch them cook it, and you do. And I'm sitting there like, man, you make me want to go to this place.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way when I begin describing to him, Davison's my favorite in Sanford. I want to go. And so when you begin to talk about how good God is, taste and see, and you begin to just, look, you can tell when something's real. With somebody, and when you can tell, listen, I usually can tell with pastors a lot of times. There's some, they'll preach, but man, you're sitting there like, I'm not sure he knows it.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be ugly, I don't mean to judge, it's just it's a textbook, it's not real.
Yeah.
Just like Jupiter, it was a textbook. No, I saw it with my own eyes.
Yeah.
Then it becomes something real.
Yeah.
We need a T for textbook.
I don't know if you're judging them. I guess that's describing them. Isn't it?
Well, it's discerning, I guess. I don't want to. I mean, I'm not saying they're saved or not saved. I can just tell this ain't real to him.
Yeah.
And but you can tell when something is real to somebody.
Yeah.
And when
Passion.
my man gets to talking about the Peddler, I know it's real. Because he even texted me and said, "Thanks for the card. I am going tonight. I can't wait. That ribeye is calling my name." I said, "Well, take a bite from me, brother."
I know their prime rib is awesome.
Yeah. Well, see, that's what I was going to tell him. Ribeye.
Yeah, and a salad bar, the smoked oysters on there.
See, look at this.
Yes,
But you get the gist of when something is real to you, you begin to describe it, it'll make you want it.
Yeah.
And I believe that's where we as a church sometimes, and I say church, I'm talking about all churches.
Right.
We make evangelism so stinking hard when it's just share what Christ has done in your life.
Yeah.
Share how good He's been. Okay, well, what if they ask questions? Okay, they ask questions. But I'd much rather just share of, this is what God's meant to me. This is what Jesus has done in my life. This is how I know it's real. Yeah. I'm telling you that as much as I love apologetics, and that's what my postmaster's work has been in is apologetics. I love it, but you can't beat somebody just saying, yeah, you can prove it to me. You can give me all the facts, but let me tell you what He's done in my life. That's hard to conquer, man. That's one that you have to say, okay,
well,
I see it.
That's a testimony.
You can't refute it.
Yeah,
all you can say
it happened. Yeah.
And you can believe it or not.
Yeah,
but it's one of, that is a powerful tool that the Lord has and gives us is, here's my story.
Yeah.
And it may not be a dazzling display but I can tell you it's nothing but grace, and I can tell you it's nothing but love.
Yeah.
And that's His story, and that's what's beautiful.
I saw a really cool thing last night. So, do y'all watch or know who Joe Rogan is, or
I've heard of
anything?
him.
Okay, so I had heard of him long before I started watching anything of his, and I still wouldn't say like I sit down and I've never listened to like a show, but he pops up in my YouTube a lot, and the reason for that is because a lot of his guests he starts on religious issues,
Right.
and it's been an interesting thing to see, and I believe from what I understand of it, that his position has been changing a lot over time slowly. If you wanted to go back and watch old episodes,
I mean, it was
maybe a little bit very hardcore anti-religion and starting to become a little bit more like, I want it to be real, I hope it's real, but that kind of thing.
I can see it seems like he's searching.
Right.
And it seems like he's actually, when people stand in front of him and tell the story, you can tell.
You can tell, yeah.
Okay, this is starting to sink in. He's starting to see that there's some reality here.
Yeah. So there was one that I saw the other day that apparently this guy was, like, his thing in life was he was a conspiracy theorist, like trying to go out and either prove or disprove. But he wanted to prove who really shot Kennedy. He wanted to prove what was really going on in 9/11. He wanted to prove did we really land on the moon? There you go. He probably did hear it. There you go. If I find it, if I find it in my homework, I'll send it to you. See what he takes. But he said basically that he was on the Joe Rogan show, and he was basically saying that there came a point where I looked up and I was like, you know what? I've never gone after the God conspiracy. And again, not really going at it to prove it or disprove it.
Right.
He was basically saying, I've never really looked into this. Let's see if this is a hoax or if this is legit. And he starts to tell his story. This is the coolest thing. And I would link it and share it or something like that if the language weren't very out there.
Joe's pretty rough.
Yeah, well, even this guy was. But now, I'll say something, though. He reminded me so much of me, honestly, a while back. That he was basically, he said straight up, like, I mean, this is all kind of new to me, so, and you could tell me he's cussing like crazy, but it's one of those things that he's like, I'm still figuring it out, and he was openly saying, like, I don't have all the answers for you, Joe, but, like, the way he was describing his experience was, I went to try to figure out, is this real or not, and before I knew it, I was just overwhelmed by how much it was changing everything about me, and I think it was I can watch this guy's testimony, if that's what it would be called here, and say, oh yeah, I connect with what he's doing now. Yeah, he's still cussing a little bit. I get that. Yeah. It took a while for God to really work on that part of it. Yeah, he works on the heart first. That's right. He makes you a nicer person. He makes you love people. He makes you care for people. Then he starts to work on, I think I referred to it one time as cosmetic. I don't mean for it to be just, but, you know, I don't cuss nearly as much as I did a long time ago, and it's mainly because I don't want to. I don't put an effort into it. I think I said on the show one time I'm like PG-13. I'd say now I'm mostly PG.
Yeah.
Occasionally some PG-13 if I have a bad day or something, but I'm mostly PG now.
Right.
And I haven't tried to work on it.
It's not like you, rubber band.
It was just something that now when I hear it, I don't like it. I just try not to say it, you know, and it's, if I hear it from me, it sounds even worse, you know, so it's like I'm trying not to, I hate to hear me say it more than anybody else, but watching this guy, I was like, yeah, I pick up what you're putting down there. I know what you're going through and I know how you're feeling because it was new to him, but he was so overwhelmed at what it was doing to him. And old Joe was like, wow, like you could see he's
tasted grace.
Yeah. And that's what witnessing is and what testimony, you know, sharing your testimony is. It's not about going through and, as we've said before, you didn't show up the next day after you got saved playing basketball and everything was perfect. And I didn't play golf the next day and everything be perfect, right? But you changed. You're a different person. You just haven't, you know, it's not complete. It's just starting.
Takes a while for the outside to catch up with the inside.
There you go, yeah.
But it's one of, that inside is we're being changed and transformed more and more each day.
Yeah.
And eventually it does, and eventually it becomes more and more that, it ain't a matter of trying harder.
Yeah.
It's dying more.
It really is, because it's not, that's such a hard, this is really where this whole Jupiter-Saturn thing came from for me. I'm so aggravated with the fact that I can't articulate what I'm trying to say here. Right. I know in my mind what I'm trying to say when I think about God and what he's done in my life makes total sense. It just doesn't have an English combination of words that I can communicate it with, and that drives me insane because I like to talk so much. There's got to be a combination of words I can use that explains this, right? But I can't. There's just not, I can't quite put my word or my finger on the exact way to say it. But then you see it in somebody else, and I know it when I see it, I just can't describe it. You know what I mean?
That's it.
And that's where I was like, how do I explain this? It's like, that's it. It's as I see Saturn, it makes more sense, and that makes, you know.
See, that's what no show prep does for you, Kenny.
Yeah.
That's right.
All that show prep, I can't understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We run
next.
This is a 2-minute drill show. A 2-minute drill show. Okay, no huddle. Get to the line. We'll call the plays when we get there. All right.
Jesus said, that's either in John 6:36 or 8:36. I think 6:36 was the feeding.
6 was the feeding.
He says that whom the Son of Man has set free shall be free indeed. Mm-hmm. But we're already free.
That's right.
We just don't know it. I was at a treatment center, 6, 7, maybe my 8th one. It was the last one. I just couldn't change. I wanted to, but I couldn't change. And it had to deal with alcohol. I wanted to. I was seeing my life just slowly, marriage and everything was just slowly getting away from me. And there was nothing I could do. And so anyway, I was at this last treatment center. God really, because I was kind of very down, and that, is this going to be like this? Is this all it is? Am I going to die like this? But I was at a mountain, a treatment center in Boone, and it's about three. And I'll kind of give you the details of the scenery, not for your sake. I know you'll understand it. So you'll understand it better. Try and draw him a picture. I can just talk to him. I'm trying to draw a picture for him. And but anyway, I had volunteered. We lived on a river, just getting started. I always say more of like a creek, probably about 30 feet wide, probably about maybe 1.5 feet deep. And it was one of the three rivers three rivers that start out of Grandfather Mountain. And we were about 2, maybe 3 miles away. There was a wildlife place where they would stock fish in there, or they maintained the river. So, and there was a lot of wild trout in there. And you would see them, the beautiful rainbow trout. So anyway, they were going to restock it. And I volunteered. And the reason why I volunteered, because I just wanted to get away from there. So I volunteered so I can get off the property. And to stop fish, they brought this big old truck up the mountain. And they were going to put like 500 trout, big rainbow trout in there. I said, oh, this would be a piece of cake. But it had rained that day, and I had to go up the mountain, carry this big, I guess, 50-gallon trash can. 2 of us were slipping and sliding all the way down. I was tired by the time I got up to it, and we dumped the fish out. That's about 3 or 4 times.
Now, you're doing that for each time?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I probably carried a trash can. There was 8 of us. And me and another guy, probably maybe 50 times. I'm worn out.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to catch my breath.
Yeah.
And I'm looking over there on the creek or the river, and all these fish were just swimming. The current coming this way, they were just doing enough to keep themselves
Standing still.
Standing still. And I asked the guy, the Park Service guy, I guess, or whoever was up there. He said, "Watch this." So he threw some cat food out there in the middle of the stream. He said, wait a couple minutes. And all of a sudden, it was splashing everywhere. It was like a feeding frenzy.
Okay.
And then when the cat food was gone, it
Went back home.
was calm. And I said, what just happened? He said, those were the wild fish that come up. They smelled it. It took them a couple of minutes downstream. They come up and ate it. And those other ones were just still standing there. I said, well, why didn't they move? And he said, they don't know they're free.
Yeah.
They're free, but they don't know it.
Yeah.
And it will take them about a couple of weeks to realize that they're free, and they'll scatter around. And that's just how we are in our life, that we're free. But sometimes we live in a prison with no walls.
Yeah.
But we are free. And sometimes it takes a while, not that God has already told you you're free, but to realize that we are free. We are free from everything. That was the beginning. There was a lot of things that went on for the next year and a half, back and forth, but that's when I started realizing that I was really free.
You're free, you just ain't living it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it took me a while. It took me about a year and a half to, I would be free for a little bit and be back in. So it was a back and forth. But eventually, I haven't looked back. Mm-hmm. And that's when I mentioned my biblical motivation. That was part of because I didn't know if I live or die. So.
Yeah.
And I think I love the story.
That's
by the way.
beautiful. That's
and
a
I think
great
it's
No, I don't want to have to repeat.
You're exactly
That was a
right.
long one.
No, you're exactly right, though. But I think the ultimate thing is like in that story, you got to realize you're free.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of Christians don't understand when Jesus says, "Whom the Son sets free is free indeed." What does that freedom mean? Well, I'm free from condemnation. I'm free from judgment. I'm free from discouragement. I'm free from the penalty of sin. I'm free from the power of sin. I'm free from the presence of sin. I am free from a lot of things, but I don't know that we either don't understand what that freedom is, or like you said, what do I do with it? Because a lot of people will take that freedom and use it to live any way they want.
Well, yes.
And that's what the book of Galatians is saying is, yes, you're free, but use it to love. Use it to serve. Use it to be under the law of Christ, not under the law of the Old Testament, not under the flesh either, but instead use that freedom for Christ's sake.
That was great. That was a cool story, and thanks for the way you recapped that too. Because that was my next question. Okay, well, what, free from what though?
Yeah.
Specifically, because I think I struggle to balance the humility side with that freedom and he loves me side. Right? Like it's easy for me to humble myself and to remind me of how great this grace was and how much I don't deserve it and all that kind of stuff. But I have a real hard time doing that at the same time that I realize that God loves me like I love my kids. He doesn't just accept me and tolerate me and okay, well, I'll give you one more chance kind of thing. It's not that way. Reese is more than the other two kids. It will be really quick to maybe go a little bit over dramatic when she gets in trouble and try to really play the you're looking at it like no kidding. She's the most dramatic. She loves to over exaggerate the trouble she's in and cry and really just really beat herself up over it. And she'll say you hate me, I'm a terrible kid, I'm a mean kid. Well, that makes me about as mad as what she did.
It's
because
worse.
I've told her before when I'll say this, and I love you, Reese. If you hear this, Daddy loves you, but it makes me mad when you do that, and here's why. And I've told her before. When she says you don't love me, or when she says I'm a terrible kid, whatever, I tell her it hurts my feelings when you hear her say that, because I know how much I love you, and I know how much I try to show you how much I love you, and I do everything that I can to show you and be a loving father to you. So for you to tell me that you're a horrible kid and that I don't love you, whatever, that tells me that I'm doing a rotten job of showing you that love. Well, when you flip that around on God and say, okay, I'm going to be self-loathing and hate myself for the things I've done and hang on to those sins, it's like, well, then why in the world did I send my son to die for it? What was the point of that if you're not going to accept it?
There's an opposite of pride, but it's still a form of pride. That false modesty. Yep. It is not a beautiful thing. It is not a good thing. Legitimate modesty is a wonderful thing, but that fake modesty of I'm just no good. I'm just no. God. I think that just like that example there. I think that sickens God just as much as pride. Yeah. Because it is a fake pride of down deep I know I am, but I'm just going to say
right. Yeah. Because I could say that, it may not be fake, right? It could be a genuine self-loathing. It's probably not. Yeah. No. I mean, but it's, in her case, definitely not.
but you believe me, I've seen it. A lot of times Christians play that card.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, y'all do whatever. I'm not. I don't count. I'm this. I'm that. And it's kind of like, wait a second, stop that. Yeah. You're a child of God, so quit being in your feelings that much on that. Yeah. You want to be in your feelings about something. Be in your feelings about something that's truthful and matters. Not that I'm no count.
And Kenny said a lot. He has talked a lot about taking God at His word. And here's the thing, you don't get to cherry pick which parts of the Bible you want to believe, right? Absolutely. You don't get to just believe that He saved you for your sins and ignore the part where He said He loved you. You don't get to just cherry pick the part where He said
that. Holy then because I'm holy.
Right.
And we do have a lot of that. A lot of pastors, or I wouldn't say pastors, more so evangelists. No, I'm not talking about your local
It's all
pastors.
of them, brother.
Evangelists,
pastors, missionaries, Christians, we all want to pick our favorites.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we can be Bible bullies, scripture bullies. Yeah. Just pick and choose.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, you can't you
want to beat somebody to death with it.
Yeah, you can't just sit there and dig in on that one verse that says this thing's a sin that you can't do and you're a terrible person for doing it and then ignore Ephesians 4 altogether. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you have to take God's word in its entirety. And when you do that, you don't get to hate yourself for your sins either, and you don't get to dwell on them and live in them that way. And you've got to remember how much He loves you, because He has shown it. You know what I mean? You don't have to say
Romans 5:8, but then Romans 8:1 is there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. So quit walking in guilt, walking in shame. You're free from that.
I think maybe where my experience with it has been is that I feel like, I'm supposed to remember them all, but Matthew 6:33 is much more important than Romans 8:1.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
well,
no, they all are
they're all equal,
right,
of equal value.
And if you are seeking first His kingdom and His righteousness and not worrying, and you're doing that one to a 10, and you're doing it in a self-loathing, I'm no good, and God, I'm lucky that you even tolerate me, blah, blah, blah. He's just as mad at you as if you were a selfish whatever.
Just as sinful as
exactly.
Else. Right.
It takes all of it, and
I think the key to understanding the Scripture, living the Scripture, is balanced.
yes,
Not too far to the right, not too far to the left.
And I'd add one more word in with balance. I think the key to living the Scriptures is surrender, and that's really where it's about. But I mean, it's all about surrender. It's not about my way. It's not about what I think. It's about I want the Word of God to infiltrate my mind, and so that I'm thinking biblically and I'm acting biblically, and those type things. And it's like we said Sunday, discipleship really is. It's about surrender.
yeah.
And if you're going to do the other 167 and do it well, it's surrendering.
Surrendering. There are a lot of gray areas.
Yes.
A lot of gray areas, and I think balancing that out is we can go to the far right to where we're no good to counter the left. But there are a lot of things that are wrong for me that aren't wrong for y'all because of the way I'm built.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you see that diversity. You see that in church denominations. I love it. I love the good ones. Now I'm talking about that. Believe the Word of God, but there's no Baptist. There's no Presbyterian. They just believe a little different, and that's okay. That really is okay with me.
Yeah.
Because I have never met, even within the Baptist, someone that believes everything I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But it's okay. I don't have all the answers, and they don't have all the answers.
Wait, and you said something there. I wanted I know that I've heard you say before, drinking alcohol by itself as a singular thing isn't necessarily a sin. Having a glass of wine or
it says so in the
beer.
Bible.
Right.
I mean, here and there, but it also says don't be drunk. So
Right.
That's the problem.
Right. And you've said to me, and I don't think you mind me sharing this, that for you to drink one might be a little bit different because of that tendency and personality.
Yeah.
I have the same tendency and personality. I've got to be very careful on that side of things because if y'all haven't figured it out by now, I'm obsessive about everything. I take everything over the top, and alcohol is one of them. But that doesn't mean just because I shouldn't drink or that I shouldn't do this or I shouldn't do that doesn't mean that it's a sin for everybody. Sinning is disobeying what God tells you to do.
Right.
Period.
And for me, I'm in the same boat. Mine is more of I don't want to cause anyone to stumble, and so I'm going to consider my freedom as one of not necessarily limiting my freedom, but I'm limited it so that I don't cause anybody else to stumble. Because, or as I like to tell my kids all the time, just because I can doesn't mean I should.
Yeah,
Right.
Paul says that.
And I can go and do those things, but it doesn't mean I should.
Right.
And I want to do the things that I should in a way that's whatever is, again, that Ephesians 4:1, if you want to use that, walk in a manner worthy of the calling.
I think what you're saying too is, like Paul, he had no problem eating meat from idols.
Yeah, I'm free.
But I'm not going to because I'm going to cause someone else to
that's
stumble.
it. Because if I cause another brother to stumble, or
And I get
someone,
that. I get that.
that's the reason. And again, I want to live my life of considering what is this going to do to others. Not,
In a way that,
not so I can put on a show, but is this going to hurt their walk? Is this going to make them question some things?
in a manner worthy of the calling.
Exactly.
That's exactly the way, that's the scriptural side of that, is in a
That's
manner worthy of the calling. And it kind of goes to Sunday's sermon, which was a punch in the nose, by the way. I loved that one.
Well, I told you
it was a great
heavy.
one.
I gave you the warning. This is heavy. If there has ever been a heavy text,
Yeah.
Luke 14:25 through 33, and really through 35, that's about as heavy as it gets. Because I dare say, and I don't know, but I dare say after Jesus said that, it's probably about like John 6. He had a huge crowd. I dare say the number said, shh.
Yeah.
That right there separates the wheat from the chaff, or the disciple from the wannabe.
Yeah, and I think that there was there was a point in there where you talked about sacrifice and submission, and I jotted those down. And then a few minutes later, I was just sitting there reading that, and I just put in parentheses below it total sacrifice, total submission, and right below that, I said that's the difference and that's the cost.
Yep.
It's easy to say I'll sacrifice. It's easy to say I'll submit. Submit everything and sacrifice everything is the cost.
Yeah, be willing to say, well, that's taking up your cross, and I'm dead to it.
Share the pearl story again for the show. That was great. I thought
there's a parable in the scriptures that Jesus has called the pearl of great price, and what it is, the man goes and he finds a pearl, and he wants to buy the field in order to get that pearl, and he goes, and no matter what the cost was, he's willing to pay it. Well, Ortiz is the man who wrote the I think it's a book. I'd call it a book. It's not a thick one, but it's called Disciple. And on there, he begins to talk about, he analyzes that, and basically, the man goes and he says, "Well, I want to buy the pearl or the field. Who all can buy it? Anybody can buy it." Well, I thought it was expensive. Well, it is expensive. It's going to cost you everything you got. What do you mean everything? How much you got in the bank? $10,000. All right, that's mine. Okay, and have you got anything in your pocket? I got a couple $100 in my pocket. That's mine too. Yep. And he proceeds to go on. He begins to talk about his house. That's mine. Well, where am I going to sleep? In my camper? Oh, you got a camper?
Yep.
That's mine.
Yep.
And then after a camper, where am I going to sleep? In my car? You got a car?
Yeah.
I
My man should learn to shut up by the end.
Yeah, I got 2 cars. Oh, and then it's where's my family going to sleep? Oh, you got a family. And basically, it is just showing that discipleship is everything. Your relationships, your children, and when he says there, if you have not basically renounced your goods or willing to give away your goods, you can't be my disciples. Really, what he's saying there is, make me you're a steward. I'm the owner. And at the end of the story, the man selling the pearl basically says, here's the catch. Everything's mine, including you. Your family, everything's mine. But you can use it all you want. But when I have need of it, it's mine. Yeah. And I think that's the way to look at our stuff and what God has blessed us with is he blesses us so we can be a blessing. And so when he blesses us with those things, it is to bless others or to make others know who Christ is. And so nothing wrong with owning stuff. It's when stuff owns you is the problem.
And that's something so I've got another Sunday school class coming up in July, and it's on, I think it's the end of Acts 4 and beginning of Acts 5.
Oh, good. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent passage.
So that, I don't know, I love the way you described that Sunday and that story. That was one of the best I've ever heard, especially the end of that story. Right? And that it doesn't mean you're now destitute. Yeah. That's the process. It means, and me and my mom were talking about that Sunday after sermon. She said, when you think about us fighting over stuff like that and trying to hoard the stuff we have, it's like 2-year-olds in a daycare wanting to hoard the toys that they've got. They're not even their toys in the first place, right? Everything we have, including your family, including the things that we don't want to surrender to God because that's too much, he gave it to you.
He gave it to you.
Right. And to be selfish with it in any way, shape, or form, whether it's your treasures, your time, your talents, your family, all these things.
Yep.
It's disrespectful to him who gave it to you in the first place. I mean, he could also remind you sometime he can take it back too.
That's right.
But that's such when you talk about that walking in unity, I mean, that's the thing. We none of us provided anything for ourselves here. Right? I mean, our own life, our own family, our own anything. Everything was from him in the first place. And I think I said that on one of the shows. Like, I had a hard time giving my life over to God, which was kind of ironic considering he's the one who gave it to me in the first place. Yeah. Right? But you giving it to him doesn't mean you've got to, everything's going to be miserable.
Everything's going to be miserable.
It just means it's your buy-in to think about what's going on in Acts, right? Everybody was bringing everything they had, but they were sharing everything. So now rather than just having your time, treasure, and talents, you're participating in everybody else's. But when he needs you to tap you on the shoulder for something,
it's yours, Lord.
Right.
And I think that's where freedom is. Again, let's talk about freedom. That's where freedom is okay, Lord, I'm just a steward of this stuff. I'm just a manager. I don't have to own it. No, I'm a manager. So Lord, it's yours. If you need it for anything, and there's a freedom there. I think the other thing is when you get to that place to where, as I said Sunday, when stuff stuff is a great servant. It's a terrible master. When it owns you, and you gotta, man, it'll drive you crazy.
Yeah.
And when your life is about stuff, oh man, because stuff will fade and rot and deteriorate, and thieves break in and steal.
Yeah.
Has to be maintained.
Yeah,
Like a truck.
Jesus said, lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth won't eat it up, nor will thieves break in and steal it. And so make your treasures where they're going to last.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many simple little. Nobody thinks you can take it with you.
Right.
Nobody. Not since what the ancient Egyptians.
They tried.
They tried. I mean, nobody thinks you can take it with you.
The grave robbers got pretty rich.
There you go. But I mean, it's. But I think
One of my
that's.
favorites.
Giving up, but see, that can sound like we're only talking about the material things, and it can be, but it also is your time. It also is your family. It is also, it's everything. And it's honestly, you want to get to the heart of the matter, pick the one thing that's the most important to you that you will absolutely not give up under any circumstance. That's what he's talking about.
You got it. You got it. And again, we go back and we say that, we look at it as what we're giving up. What are you gaining?
Yeah.
You're gaining life. I think one of the things that we were talking about Romans 8, we always mention it, but I love this verse. I was looking at it this morning, it really spoke to me. It said, for the mindset on the flesh is death. But now listen, but the mindset on the spirit is life and peace. That's what so many people are looking for.
Yeah.
And if you think God is a tyrant who basically don't want you to have anything, no joy, no peace, he just said right there,
Yeah.
he's got life and peace for you.
Yeah.
I like the scripture. I mean, it goes along with what you're saying. I always quote it in my mind is gain the whole world, lose your soul, what
Yep.
the profit?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think, too, I finished Leviticus, and there was one thing I wanted to just touch on quickly from that. It's kind of like what I said in Exodus at one point, where it's just like you go on and on and on and on and on, building the tabernacle, all these things, and then something stands out that's like, oh, wait, this isn't some type of a ritual type thing.
Yeah.
This is a real, okay. And it was...
It jumped out.
Yeah, exactly. And it was 26 verses 9 through 13.
Okay.
So-
I was wondering, I wish I'd have said. I guess it's towards 26, right?
Yep, that was it. Yeah, 26, and it was 9 through 13 specifically is what I have circled in there. So that's where he I will look upon you with favor and make you fruitful and increase your numbers, and I will keep my covenant with you. You will still be eating last year's harvest when you have to move it out to make room for the new. I will put my dwelling place among you. I will not abhor you. I will walk among you and be your God, and you will be my people. I am the Lord your God, which he says that a lot in Leviticus.
Yes.
I am the Lord your God,
That's
who
it.
brought you out of Egypt so that you would no longer be slaves to the Egyptians. I broke the bars of your yoke and enabled you to walk with heads held high. And I thought very similar to what I thought in Exodus. That is an entire book to remind you of that passage.
Yep.
All the sacrifices, all the things that he's telling you to do, all these details that you're just like, why? Another thing, what's the big deal about this and this and this and this? That's why. It's because
I am the Lord your God.
that's right.
I will be among my people. The nations will know who you are, who I am, because of who you are, and who I am through you. That's it.
And even in, this was a little thing that stuck out to me there, even in the rituals of atoning for sin and the sacrifices for sin, even that, if your heart is set the right way on him, even that is a reminder that he's among you, that, okay, I'm giving you this goat because I did this thing yesterday that disappointed you. But if you have the right biblical motivation and perspective on that, how lucky are you that the only thing you have to do to get yourself back into his grace, even in the Old Testament, is give up a goat and you're good, or give up a whatever it was. So
You got it. You got it.
When you said it shows you God's heart, that's maybe the verses that I think summarizes his heart
His
the
heart,
most.
his holiness.
I'm going to give you 27 books to tell you how important it is to me that I get to dwell among you.
Yep.
Right? So now it's on to numbers. Anything for numbers to prep me for that? What are we getting into
I
in
think
numbers?
you'll like numbers. Kenny does. He's an accountant.
I've always wondered, does numbers have anything to do with actual numbers?
It
does.
Okay.
Generations.
They are counting the children and about to go into the land. Numbers will have some things you'll see there, kind of some recounting of some of their adventures. There's going to be there's some good things in Numbers. You'll like it.
Yeah.
There's going to be times that you're going to be like, It's a step above, definitely Leviticus.
Yeah.
But it is very enjoyable. I liked it, and you're gonna find out that it's gonna have some stuff too about the law.
Yeah.
But it's going to get better.
Yeah.
It gets better.
Well, I've been cheating a little bit, so I told you that I may think about doing this anyway. To help me break up the monotony of Leviticus, I've also started in Psalms.
And you'll like that.
It's so funny to me. So you talked about Psalm 34 today. I think 33 is the last one I read, if I'm not mistaken. So that'll be the next one I get to. But a quick one on that. Psalm 22,
No.
I saw and I was like, okay, again, back to apologetics, which I don't get into a ton on
Never
that.
seen
But,
the crucifixion, by the way.
right. And this happened 900 years
Yeah, it's
before.
about 1,000 years for the very first crucifixion. David didn't know a thing about crucifixion, but you read Psalm 22 in certain places, and you would think he was eyeballing somebody on the cross.
Yeah.
It was Romans introduced that, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was some, but
it
the
was-
Romans really
perfected it.
popularized it and very much
Perfected
made it into the art form
Yeah,
that
perfected
it was. And so, but David would have never, that wasn't around during that time. And so for David to describe it like he does, that's one of those times when you have to sit there and say, okay, Lord, you were showing him something about what was to come.
Well, and I even, for the fun of it or whatever you want to call it, amateur apologetics maybe, but I even Googled basically when was Psalm 22 written, just to see okay, there's going to be a range. I'm sure.
Nowhere
I
near
couldn't
close.
find any source that said it was written before or that was written after 1st century BC or 100 years BC. That was the most extreme,
Most
right?
people put it with David.
Yeah.
Right.
Didn't he say
David was
David?
right at 1,000 BC is when he would have come to
What was it?
Psalm 22. But that would have been David. David was around right at 1,000 BC.
Right.
1,000 years before Christ.
So even like your most like anti-Christian, not trying to do anything about like how far can we disprove this prophecy or whatever you want. Even that couldn't say that it happened after Jesus was here.
No.
And back to kind of the beginning of it, maybe to some extent, I can get into apologetics if I think that's an area of it that I could get really into.
Right.
Just the way my brain's fixed. But here's the thing about it. Okay, so there could be an argument that we retranslated it 500 years after he died to make it this. You can always find inaccurate information to try to come back at things like that. But you get the opportunity when you live it yourself to see things that are undeniable because you were there, you did see it, you did. Right. There's nothing in apologetics that is going to be ever how unlikely it would be that David could have written that 900 years before Jesus was here is not any more unlikely than it was the changes that I've seen in my own life from just having him in it.
Yeah, apologetics is just a tool.
Right.
And for some people they love it. For some people I talk to, they could give, could care less or care more. I don't know what that's always been the saying.
I don't like that. Yeah, when they say I couldn't care less or I could care less, I always get confused about that.
So in other words, some people, apologetics doesn't mean anything to them.
Right.
You can sit there and talk about facts of, Kenny's very good on the scriptures as far as the writings about Julius Caesar or the writings about but for some people.
Yeah.
But now other people, you begin to talk about this is my life, and let me tell you how God met me, whether it was in a surgery or I was at my wit's end and He showed up. And some people, man, they jump on that, and most people will jump on that just because this is real. This is a real story. This isn't something that may have been written at a certain time. No, this is top notch. I got proof. I'm living proof.
And there are some people that have come to Christ in apologetics.
Sure.
Some people that it's a makeup thing again. Some people come off based on testimony. It just depends on who you are and what you like.
I love it just because, that's just the numbers and, if you got this many and that many. No, I love it. At the same time, I know there are people that I talk to.
Yeah. I mean, Josh McDowell tried to disprove the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's one of the biggest.
Yeah.
Or he was.
And Lee Strobel, too.
Yeah,
Lee Strobel,
A
Case for Christ. Anybody that wants proof in that's a great work because he set out to disprove it and found out, this might be true.
What was the
Case for the resurrection. He did a case for Christ. Case for the Bible.
Case for Christ is one I think that I've heard.
That's the
Case
very
for
first
Christ,
one.
yeah.
That's his most popular. And basically, he set out to find out, okay, is this Jesus real?
Who was the one that wrote? He's been dead a long time ago, but he wrote around,
Christianity?
Yeah, but he was
C.S. Lewis?
C.S. Lewis. Yeah, he was a big one.
Yeah, he's probably the granddaddy of it. But yeah, there's so many that are out there now that Norm Geisler, several other folks that are so good, and you can read now. Norm Geisler's going home to be with the Lord, but there are some great ones out there.
Well, there's so
Frank
many
Turek.
people that have set out to disprove it and then become Christian. Those are amazing stories. And at the same time, there are some that could care less about the or couldn't care
doesn't float
less
their boat.
about it. But I think back to my theme verse there. Our job is just to get them to ask questions.
That's it.
Right? And how we do that? By walking in on the
Showing how good he is and sharing how good he is.
Yeah.
And God knows
Being
what
that
people
strong.
need. God knows what will take them.
Oh, yeah.
to believe.
Yeah.
And there was one Acts. I remember that. I just come across it. I can't think of his name. He went out to disprove Acts. And if there's any book in the Bible, you can disprove his Acts
Yeah.
because of the location. Well, he thought it could.
Yeah, thought he could.
Location, this and that. I can disprove that pretty quickly. Well, everything he found was right there.
And even some of the inscriptions and some of the things was even better than what most historians. Luke was a historian.
Yeah.
He was a doctor, but Luke was detailed. He was detail oriented. I mean, I see it in his own book sometimes that he's like, well, he's hitting on a lot more stuff than anybody else did. Whether it's a detail or whether he describes something or maybe a little bit more than Matthew or somebody. Well, definitely more than Mark because Mark barely had time to write. He didn't. You can tell that brother did not like to write.
He just fired it off. It was just.
Most people believe he had Peter as his the one who was telling him.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine. And
I'm telling you, you've got to get caught up on Chosen when you get a chance because once
I love Matthew.
When Jesus renames Simon Peter and he tells him he's the rock, boy, the other 11 will lose it for about a show. It's great to see them react.
And I started thinking about that, and I
see the eye roll.
Yeah.
Was that the cause of James and John's mother wanting to be at the right hand of Jesus?
I don't know if it was the cause, but I mean,
that might have been something that could. Well, now Peter's got a new name. We didn't get a new name.
That's depicted in
and
that
they're talking
episode.
about the kingdom. So
Yeah.
and I think that was the whole thing is they're looking towards the kingdom, and that just is a thing to request.
Yeah. Well, that's depicted in that episode is that they're talking to their mom and she's kind of getting, she's putting her 2 cents worth in there. You need to get you a, yeah.
There are some things in the Chosen that aren't biblical. And when I say that, they're not non-biblical.
Right.
It's
well, you got to make the story.
They're added for effect, yeah.
And we have to, Christian people, because they want that, is it in the Bible? Renee asked me, is that in the Bible? Yeah. No,
where are they getting this from?
Yeah.
But we have to remember the Chosen is not in competition with the Bible.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just, and most Christian movies that come out, they're not in competition.
No.
They're just trying to explain it.
You just want to make, and I think the thing, we just want to make sure it's biblical. And
overall, it
and
is.
sometimes you run into some,
Yeah.
NBC will do something every now and then that you're like, I'm not sure where they're reading that from. So I think that's where people just want to make sure, okay, is this, and to me, The Chosen does a good job.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I don't know if Jesus wore a white robe or a purple robe or a green robe, or I'm not interested in that. I just want to see, all right, so that's their take on it, and this is what he taught.
And I don't know if he even had a beard. Some of the earliest.
Of course he did.
Well, some of the earliest pictures of Jesus has him with no beard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And that's not even, I mean, who knows what he looked like, honestly.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't think they were.
We know we didn't have Kodaks.
Yeah.
We do know in Who's Believes Our Report, Isaiah 53, that he was not somebody that was just like,
he was not very handsome.
I would like to be like him.
Yeah.
He was just a normal man.
Just normal dude.
And maybe not even a normal man. Maybe he was ugly. That might have been the point. He was just a normal man.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
He didn't come here to establish a earthly kingdom.
Yeah.
That wasn't his mission.
Yeah. I love the way you said it last week on all these things. You said we can take ourselves way too seriously. We don't take the gospel serious enough. I thought that was such a when you start comparing notes and this is important to me. And I liked what you said too earlier about the Presbyterians versus the Baptists versus the whatever and competing religions and all this. It's like that's so many of those things would be Jesus wouldn't have liked that. You know what I mean? Like, that would have been on the top of his hit list if he were here today.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that we can always consider is the things that was on top of Jesus' mind back then. I don't know that they've changed. We're no different, and I dare say some of the things that he gives the Pharisees the most grief about, we need to search our own hearts, because, hey, look, we down deep, when it all comes down to it, we all got, especially if we've been born again, we all got a little Pharisee in us. And I want all the Pharisee in me to die. And so those same things Jesus teaches, they're not foreign, or we don't have to worry about that anymore. It is the same things we deal with today.
Well, and I don't often say something that I know I'm going to regret in a month or two when I listen to this back and God hits me with it, but I will say one of the things you got to submit is that sin that you cannot forgive, or that one thing from somebody else that you cannot stand. Like, all those things I'll forgive everything, but that's the part you have to give him.
Don't put no butt on it. Don't put no butt.
Yeah. What comes after the butt's what you got to give up.
It's the pearl. That's right.
Thank you, guys.
All right,
Thank you,
man.
good. Appreciate it. Kenny?
You ready? Or you want me to get it?
No, you go ahead, 'cause you got. I have a King James, and people won't understand a lot of that.
I struggle. In fact, when I edit, Garrett, when you both got to edit this, move this up and say this first.
I forgot what I was going to say now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. I had thought of something about being free.